The night the truth unraveled. It was raining so hard that even the streetlights seemed to flicker in fear. I stood outside, soaked to the bone, staring up at the window of my son's house. The same house I helped him build from the ground up. I was no longer welcome. He had slammed the door in my face with the kind of hatred that comes only from deep disappointment or greed. He thought I was a burden now, a jobless old man with nothing left to offer. But what he didn't know, what no one knew, was that I wasn't just some poor, helpless viejo begging for a place to sleep. I had a secret, one I had kept buried for almost 15 years. A secret fortune, hidden away from even my own blood. And as I stood there, wet and shaking with both cold and fury, I smiled. Because he had no idea the lesson I was about to teach him. He had no idea who his father really was. And the storm that was brewing inside of me, that was just the beginning. You want to see what happens when a man is betrayed by his own flesh and blood? Sit tight. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Ernesto Delgado, 63 years old, father of 2, widower. For most of my life, I worked as a master woodworker in Valencia, Spain. I had hands that could carve life into dead trees, a back bent from labor, and a heart hardened by time. My wife, Lucia, died 10 years ago. Cancer took her slow. I took care of her until her last breath. After that, all I had left was my work and my sons Javier and Mateo. Javier, the older one, took after me. Quiet, calculated, a craftsman too. Mateo? He was born with the wind in his hair. Smart, but always chasing shortcuts. From the beginning, he looked at me not as a father, but as a stepping stone. He loved the image of wealth, not the sweat it took to earn it. Still, I loved him. He was my son. I built a small shop in the outskirts of town. Delgado Maderas. Nothing fancy. Just honest work. Furniture, custom staircases, doors, cabinets. If it could be made of wood, I could make it. My name was known. My hands were trusted. And though the money wasn't always plenty, it was enough. Then came the downturn. A major client backed out. Another went bankrupt. The orders stopped coming. Suddenly, I was no longer the proud craftsman of Valencia. I was an old man with bills piling up and hands starting to tremble. I didn't tell my sons. Not yet. I sold my tools to pay my workers. Sold the van. Even moved into the back of the shop to save money on rent. I kept up appearances as best I could. I still visited Mateo's home on Sundays. Ate with his family. Played with my granddaughter, Isabella. She was 6, bright-eyed, always asking me to carve her little animals. She was the only one who truly saw me. But Mateo began to grow distant, less warm, less patient. "Papa, you look tired," he would say. "Maybe it's time to slow down, sell the shop, retire." He wanted me to give up. But how could I? That shop was all I had left of Lucia. She had painted the sign, planted the little olive tree in the front. I wasn't ready to let it go. Then the final blow came. I was served notice. The bank had foreclosed. It was all gone. I packed what little I had into a small duffel and made my way to Mateo's house. I hadn't asked for help in decades, but that night I had no choice. He opened the door with a glass of wine in hand. "Papa? What are you doing here?" I told him everything. The lost job, the shop, the foreclosure. He listened, stone-faced, then said, "So what do you expect from me?" I told him I needed a place to stay. Just until I found my feet again. A couch, a floor, anything. He looked over his shoulder as if checking to see who might be watching. And then he said something I'll never forget. "You've had your life. You made your choices. Don't dump your problems on me now." He closed the door. My own son. He left me out there like trash on the curb. I slept on a park bench that night. I cried. Not because of the cold, but because I had given him everything. And in my darkest hour, he gave me nothing. But life has a funny way of revealing true colors. The next day, I went to the bank. And that's where my secret began to come alive again. 15 years ago, after Lucia died, I stumbled into something most men only dream about. I was working on a custom cabinet for a wealthy recluse, Don Sebastian Moreno. He was a collector of gold coins, rare books, and old paintings. We became close. He trusted me. told me stories from his youth. One day he handed me an old envelope. "In case anything ever happens to me," he said, "open this. But only when the time is right." He died a year later. I never opened it until the night after Mateo turned me away. Inside was the deed to a private vault in Switzerland. I thought it was a joke. It wasn't. I flew out days later using the last of my savings. The vault held a fortune. Gold bars. Rare coins. Letters proving ownership of lands in Colombia and a vineyard in southern Spain. It was real. It was all mine. He had no heirs. He left it all to me, and I never told a soul. I lived modestly because I never wanted to be used. I never wanted my sons to become lazy or entitled. But now that Mateo had shown me who he really was, I knew what I had to do. I wouldn't just live well. I would make him see what he lost. I returned to Spain under a new name just a few weeks ago. I bought a villa near the coast, hired staff, started rebuilding Delgado Maderas. Only this time, I made it a luxury brand, backed by an anonymous investor. That investor was me. Mateo applied for a job there last week, and tomorrow he has an interview with me. But he has no idea what he's about to walk into, because I'm not just going to show him what he lost. I'm going to teach him a lesson that will echo through generations. Let's go back. Months before the rain, before the betrayal, before the secret was awakened. I was still in that workshop back then, cutting wood with hands that had more scars than skin. The orders had started thinning out. I had stopped replacing broken tools. The sound of machinery had faded into a silence that lingered too long in the evenings. But I kept pretending. Every morning, I dressed in my same dusty overalls and walked the same 3 blocks to the shop. I'd open the shutters, light the incense like Lucia used to do, and pray to God for one more customer. Sometimes I got lucky. A broken chair to fix. A wobbly table leg to tighten. But those moments became rare. And the silence? It started whispering things I didn't want to hear. I was becoming invisible. My son, Mateo, called less and less. The last time I visited his home before it all exploded, I noticed his wife, Sandra, barely said 2 words to me. She watched me the way one watches something that overstayed its welcome. Even my granddaughter, Isabella, was quieter. Her curious eyes noticed how my shoes had worn down, how my fingers trembled slightly when I held her drawings. One Sunday, after lunch, Mateo pulled me aside. "Papa," he began, clearing his throat like he had rehearsed the speech. "I've been thinking. You should consider selling the shop. The business is dying. It's not like the old days." "It's not dying," I lied, swallowing the knot in my throat. "It's just a slow season." He smirked. "You always said we should be honest in this family." "Well, honestly? You look tired. You're 63. You should be resting, not sanding floors." "I don't do it because I have to," I said. "I do it because I want to. Because it means something." He didn't get it. He never did. To him, work was only valuable if it brought in money. And I hadn't brought in much for a while. A week later, I got the foreclosure notice. They were taking the shop. My knees buckled the moment I read it. I sat on the floor, surrounded by the dust of unfinished chairs and broken dreams. I could have opened the envelope Don Sebastian gave me right then. I could have called a lawyer, claimed the inheritance, and solved everything overnight. But I didn't. Pride is a strange thing. It makes you choose silence over salvation. I packed my tools in a single duffel, locked the doors to the shop for the last time, and made my way to Mateo's home. I knocked on his door, heart heavy, knowing I was about to beg. He opened the door with a look of surprise that quickly soured. "Papa, is everything okay?" "I lost the shop," I said, barely able to meet his eyes. "I don't have anywhere else to go." He stood silent. I heard the television in the background, Sandra laughing at something. "I just need a few days. A couch. Anything." Mateo exhaled deeply, rubbing his temple. "You should have planned better," he said. "I have a family now. A wife, a daughter. I can't have you here too." "I'm not asking to stay forever." "You shouldn't be asking at all," he snapped. "You're a grown man. You're not my responsibility." His words hit like a punch. And before I could respond, he closed the door. I stood there, staring at the brass doorknob, the same one I had installed when he bought the house. I had helped him finance it. Helped paint the nursery. Helped fix the plumbing. And now? He threw me away like basura. I walked 5 blocks in silence. My feet hurt. My chest ached. That night, I slept on a bench near the Plaza de la Reina. The cold bit into my bones and the stone beneath me offered no comfort. But in the middle of the night, as I stared up at the stars through tear-stung eyes, I remembered the envelope. The one from Don Sebastian. I reached into my bag and pulled it out. It was time. The next morning, I bought a cheap plane ticket to Zurich using the last euros I had left. I didn't call anyone. I didn't leave a note. I just boarded the plane like a ghost drifting through the world. In Switzerland, I entered the bank, heart pounding like a drum. I handed them the deed. They examined it, verified the signature, and then the manager led me through a corridor of steel and silence. Vault 32B. It took 2 keys and a fingerprint scan. Inside was something out of a dream. Gold. Bars of it. Dozens. Documents. Old coins in velvet pouches. Property deeds. A letter from Don Sebastian. For Ernesto, the only man I ever trusted. You were honest when everyone else lied. You treated my treasures like they were yours. Now they are. I stood there in stunned silence. It was more than a fortune. It was validation. I returned to Spain with a plan. I would start over, but not as Ernesto Delgado, the struggling carpenter. No. That man had been thrown out by his own son. This time I would be the anonymous investor. The silent force behind a new Delgado Maderas reborn as a luxury brand. Bespoke furniture for the elite. A showroom in Barcelona. Production house in Valencia. I hired a young team. Designers. Engineers. Marketers. The best. I didn't want anyone to know who was behind it. Not yet. I wanted to watch from the shadows as my legacy rose again. And then, 2 weeks ago, I saw his name. Mateo Delgado. He applied for a job in our Valencia office. Apparently, he had been laid off. Apparently, the man who threw his father into the street was now looking for work at the very company he thought was beneath him. Karma doesn't knock, kicks the door in. I asked my assistant to schedule an interview. I would be the one conducting it. But with a twist, he wouldn't know it was me. I would wear a false beard, hair dyed black, voice slightly altered. He hadn't seen me in months. People see what they expect to see. The date was set. Thursday, 11:30 a.m. The day I'd see my son again. Not as a father, but as the man he betrayed. I spent the night before the interview pacing the halls of my villa. I looked at the portraits of Lucia and wondered what she would say. She was always the forgiving one. But I wasn't sure forgiveness was what this moment needed. Maybe it needed truth. Maybe it needed justice. That morning, I dressed in a tailored suit. Black tie. Gold cufflinks. Everything he would associate with power. I looked in the mirror and didn't see Ernesto. I saw the ghost of every man who had ever been cast aside and then returned stronger. At 11:25 a.m., I sat in the executive chair of the glass meeting room. And at exactly 11:30 a.m., he walked in. Mateo. My son. His hair was messier than usual. His eyes carried the weight of worry. He was nervous. Good. He introduced himself with a weak smile. Senor Rodriguez, he said, using the name I had adopted for business. Thank you for taking the time. Of course, I said, voice deeper, slower. Your resume is interesting. He nodded, forcing confidence. I ran logistics for 10 years. I managed supply chains, staff, inventory, customer relations. And how did that end? I asked, staring directly into his eyes. He blinked. My company downsized. I was let go. No fault of your own? He hesitated. I suppose not. I leaned forward. What would you do if a man asked you for help and you had the power to offer it, but you turned him away? His jaw twitched. Excuse me. Answer the question, I said coldly. I'd say it depends on the situation. And if that man was your father? He froze. The color drained from his face. I slowly pulled off the glasses. Then the fake beard. Then I said his name. Mateo. He stumbled out of his chair. Papa. My stare cut through him. Do you still think I'm a burden? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. And that's when I stood. Now tell me, Mateo, do you want the job? Silence. It swallowed the entire room the moment I asked him if he still wanted the job. Mateo stood frozen, one hand gripping the back of the chair like it was the only thing keeping him from falling over. His eyes darted around the sleek office, the marble floors, the golden logo on the wall behind me, the massive window overlooking the city he thought he ruled. He wasn't in control here. I was. Papa. I don't understand, he stammered. What is this? Why, how? How did the poor, pathetic old man you turned away build an empire behind your back? I said. How did the man you abandoned walk into this room owning everything around you? He looked as if he'd been slapped. I walked around the desk slowly, each step deliberate. I wanted him to feel the weight of everything he had thrown away. Not just my presence, but my trust. My love. My sacrifices. I didn't mean to hurt you, he whispered. You didn't just hurt me, Mateo, I said. You humiliated me. You closed the door and left me out in the rain like a stray dog. After everything I gave you, you acted like I was nothing. He flinched. I was under pressure, he said. Sandra was worried. The bills? I didn't know what else to do. Lies, I said sharply. You knew what to do. You just didn't want to do it for someone who no longer served your lifestyle. He lowered his gaze. Sit down, I said. He sat like a child summoned to the principal's office. I took the seat across from him and stared. I'm going to give you a second chance, I said finally. He looked up, surprised. But not because I forgive you. Not because I need you. I'm giving it to you because I want to see who you truly are when the tables are turned. He swallowed hard. You'll start from the bottom. Warehouse assistant. No special treatment. No salary negotiations. You'll lift, load, sort, and sweat like every other man on that floor. He nodded quickly. Yes. Of course. Thank you, Papa. Don't call me that, I said coldly. Not here. Here, I'm Senor Rodriguez. And you are just another man who needs to earn his place. Tears welled in his eyes. Understood. Your shift begins tomorrow. 6 a.m. sharp. Late once, and you're out. He stood slowly, hands shaking. Gracias, Senor Rodriguez. As he turned to leave, I stopped him. One more thing. He turned. You may be my blood, Mateo, but respect is not inherited. It's earned. And you've got a lot to earn. He nodded and walked out, shoulders sagging, pride bleeding from every pore. I exhaled once the door closed. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel victory. I felt empty, because no matter how high you rise, betrayal always leaves a bruise that doesn't fade. Over the next few weeks, I watched him from the shadows. He showed up on time. He worked hard. He kept his head down. The staff liked him. They said he was humble, quiet, willing to learn. But I knew better. I knew that silence could be strategy. That hard work could be manipulation. So I tested him. I assigned him to the toughest sections, made sure his breaks were short. I asked supervisors to give him the dirtiest jobs. Mopping spills, lifting heavy crates, even cleaning the bathrooms. He never complained. Until one day, I caught him in the back of the warehouse, talking on the phone. He didn't see me. I'm telling you, Sandra, he whispered harshly. I think this guy, Rodriguez, he's got money. Big money. If I get close enough, we could. Maybe he'll invest in my old company. No, I haven't told him who I really am yet. He doesn't know. But if I play this right, my blood ran cold. He was still the same. Still scheming. Still lying. Still using. I waited until he ended the call and turned. Our eyes met. His face went pale. Senor Rodriguez, he said quickly. I was just taking a short break. Spare me, I said. You haven't changed, Mateo. You're not here to rebuild yourself. You're here to scout your next victim. He stepped forward. Papa, wait. I told you not to call me that. I snapped. He dropped his gaze. Please, just listen. I was desperate. I've been trying to fix things. Sandra's threatening to leave. I didn't mean what I said. People always say that when they get caught. But it's true, he insisted. When I saw you in that chair during the interview, I felt sick, guilty, ashamed. I wanted to tell you everything. I didn't know how. You had years to know how, I said. And you chose silence every time. He started crying. Real tears. Or so I thought. I made a mistake, he whispered. I see that now. I miss you. I miss the man I used to be when you were proud of me. Those words cut deeper than the cold night he turned me away. Because I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe my son was still somewhere in there. But truth is more important than comfort. And I needed more than words. Prove it, I said finally. If you really want to fix this, prove it. He looked up. How? I'll tell you when the time comes. Over the next few days, I gave him space. No more tests. No more pressure. And slowly, I saw something change. He smiled more. He laughed with the others. He stayed late to help an older coworker carry his tools. He offered to clean without being asked. Was it guilt? Strategy? Or growth? I didn't know. And then the moment came. The company sponsored a charity drive furniture for orphanages across Spain. I needed a leader for the project. All eyes turned to the senior managers. But I turned to Mateo. You, I said. You'll run it. His eyes widened. Me? You said you wanted to prove yourself. Here's your chance. No salary. No credit. Just service. He nodded. And he did it. Brilliantly. He organized the deliveries. Built half the beds himself. Slept in the truck some nights just to make it to remote towns. The reports came in glowing. Then one day I visited a small orphanage near Curtis. The children ran up to him. Tio Mateo, they cried. He lifted them, hugged them, laughed. I stayed hidden behind the van and watched as he gave away his jacket to a child who didn't have one. That night I cried. Because for the first time, I saw my son again. Not the man who shut me out, but the boy who once made a birdhouse with me on a Sunday afternoon. The next morning, I invited him back into the executive office. He walked in nervous, unsure of what was coming. I handed him a folder. What's this? He asked. Ownership papers, I said. 49% of Delgado Madeiras. It's yours. His mouth fell open. But why? Because you earned it, I said. Not as my son. As a man. He fell to his knees and broke down sobbing. I don't deserve this, he whispered. You didn't, I said. But you do now. We sat there in silence for a while. And when he left, he hugged me. Not out of guilt, but love. The kind that doesn't need to be explained. Peace has a strange way of making you feel invincible. Like maybe the worst is behind you. Like you can finally breathe. For a moment, I truly believed that. Mateo and I had started talking again. Really talking. We were no longer walking on eggshells or pretending the past hadn't happened. We were healing. There were dinners where we laughed, nights where we sat on the terrace and talked about Lucia, even mornings where he brought me coffee like he used to as a boy. I saw Isabella again. She ran into my arms the way she used to, no hesitation. She showed me a drawing of our old workshop and said she missed the smell of sawdust. Those words warmed my heart in a way no amount of gold ever could. The company was thriving. Our designs had landed in a luxury furniture magazine. Orders from France, Italy, even New York. Mateo handled logistics and distribution. He was sharp, focused, respectful to the workers. It was as if he was finally stepping into the man he was meant to be all along. But that's the thing about life. It rarely lets you hold peace without making you pay for it later. One Wednesday afternoon, I was sitting in the garden behind the main office when my assistant, Camila, approached me, visibly shaken. Señor Rodriguez, she said, her voice tight. There's someone here to see you. She says she knows you. From the past. I raised an eyebrow. Did she give her name? Camila hesitated. Yes. She said to tell you. Maria from Córdoba. My blood went cold. That name. I hadn't heard it in 30 years. Back when I was a different man. Before Lucia. Before the shop. Before I even knew I'd become a father. Back when I was young, foolish, and terrified of responsibility. Camila let her in. And there she was. Older now, lines around her eyes, hair streaked with silver. But the moment I looked into those eyes, I knew. It was her. Maria. And next to her stood a young man, maybe in his late 20s. Tall. Broad shoulders. Dark eyes just like mine. I stood slowly. Maria, I said, my voice hoarse. What is this? She stepped forward. This, she said, placing a hand on the young man's back, is your son. Time stopped. The air left the room like a balloon popped by a needle. My what? I whispered. His name is Elias, she said. And he's your son, Ernesto. I felt the earth shift beneath my feet. Elias stepped forward. I didn't come to take anything, he said, his voice calm, confident. I just wanted to know who you are. My mother said you were once a good man. I turned to Maria, eyes wide with betrayal. You never told me. You never asked, she said coldly. You left Cordoba with promises and dreams. I sent letters. They were never answered. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, she snapped. You moved on, got married, had another family. But I raised him, alone. Shame hit me like a flood. Suddenly, everything I thought I had repaired began to crumble again. I'm not here for money, Elias said. I'm a sculptor. I make my own living. I just wanted the truth. That's all. I sat down slowly, feeling a weight pressing on my chest. I need a moment, I whispered. They left the room quietly. I stared at the wall for what felt like hours. Could it be true? Could I have abandoned a son I never knew existed? The guilt twisted in my stomach like rusted knives. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, staring at the letter Maria had given me, a faded envelope with stamps from decades ago. Inside was a photo of a baby boy with my eyes, and handwriting I recognized. It was Lucia's. I found your letter. You said you needed time to figure out your future. I didn't tell you I was pregnant because I knew you weren't ready. But someday, if you are, I want you to meet our son. His name is Elias. I hope you'll be better than your father was to you. She had known. She had never told me. A second betrayal buried in silence. The next morning, I met Elias at a small cafe in Valencia. We talked. He told me about his work with sculptures, installations, exhibits in local galleries. He told me about the times he wondered why he didn't have a father. The nights his mother cried herself to sleep. I don't hate you, he said. I just want to know what kind of man you are now. I looked him in the eyes and said the hardest thing I've ever said. I failed you, and I don't deserve your forgiveness. He nodded slowly. Maybe not, but you deserve a chance. Days passed. We met again. And again. I invited him to the workshop. He built a sculpture out of leftover wood from our high-end designs. It was crude, raw, but full of soul. I loved it. So did Mateo. He didn't know yet who Elias really was. But that was about to change. Because one evening, after dinner with Mateo, Sandra, and little Isabella, Elias walked in. He had come to drop off a sculpture commission. He smiled politely at everyone. Mateo stood slowly, eyes narrowing. Who's this? He asked. I stood up, feeling my heart pound. This is Elias, I said carefully. He's a sculptor. And he's also a... Mateo's expression froze. Also what? I looked him in the eye. He's your half-brother. You could hear a pin drop. Sandra gasped. Isabella looked confused. Mateo's face turned to stone. What kind of joke is this? He said through clenched teeth. It's not a joke, I said. I only found out recently. I didn't know, Mateo. I swear. Mateo stood, fists clenched. So all this time I thought we were fixing things, you were keeping secrets again? It wasn't like that. Do you have any idea what this feels like? To find out I'm not your only son. You are my son, I said. So is he. I failed him just like I failed you. But I want to do right by both of you. Mateo's eyes flared. This isn't a family. This is a circus. He stormed out, slamming the door. I turned to Elias, who looked devastated. I'm sorry, he said. I shouldn't have come. No, I said. You did nothing wrong. This was my mess. And I have to fix it. But how? How do you mend two broken bridges at once? How do you repair the pain of a son you raised and one you didn't? That night I realized something. Sometimes the cost of hidden fortune isn't measured in gold. It's measured in the weight of the truth you tried to bury, and the people it buries with it. I woke up the next morning with a knot in my chest I couldn't shake. Mateo hadn't answered my calls. Sandra didn't respond to my messages. Even little Isabella didn't pick up when I tried to video chat her like we used to every Saturday morning. And Elias, he kept his distance out of respect. He said he'd wait until Mateo was ready. But something in me said this wasn't just about shock anymore. It was pride. And pride, when wounded, doesn't stay silent. It plots. I went to Mateo's house unannounced. The curtains were drawn. The car was gone. The neighbor told me they had packed bags and left late the night before. My gut twisted. I returned to the office. Work continued as usual, but something felt off. Camila stopped me before I entered my office. "There's something you should see," she whispered. She led me to a corner of the factory floor where two of the senior supervisors were speaking in hushed tones over a folder. When they saw me, they stiffened. "What is it?" I asked. One of them, Luis, a man I trusted for over 20 years, handed me the folder. Inside were copies of documents, shipping manifests, accounting spreadsheets, bank transfers, and all of them had something in common. Mateo's digital signature. "Are you telling me he's been moving money?" I asked, not fully ready to believe it. Luis nodded grimly. "At first, we thought it was just an error. But then we traced some of the accounts. Offshore. Fake company names. He's been rerouting funds for weeks. Maybe longer." I stared at the numbers. €500,000. Gone. My heart dropped. I had just started trusting him again. I gave him a second chance. I gave him ownership. I gave him everything. And he robbed me. I said nothing as I walked back to my office. I sat in the chair, closed my eyes, let the weight of the betrayal sink in. Not long after, Camila buzzed me. "He's here." I looked up. "Who?" "Mateo." I told her to let him in. When he walked through the door, I saw a man I no longer recognized. He was dressed sharp, confident, but there was no warmth in his eyes. No remorse. Just cold calculation. "I figured you'd find out eventually," he said, closing the door behind him. My voice came out quieter than I expected. "Why?" He smiled bitterly. "Why? Because you replaced me. Because you humiliated me. Because you paraded him around like he was some miracle child while treating me like dirt. You stole from the company." "I took back what was mine," he snapped. "What you owed me. What you gave away to some stranger who showed up with a sob story and a wood carving. Elias is your brother." "No," Mateo said coldly. "He's a stranger who got a father I barely recognize. You changed the second he arrived. You're wrong." "No," he said, leaning forward. "You're the one who was wrong. About me. About loyalty. About family." I stared at him, something inside me breaking slowly. "You were my second chance, Mateo. I lost one son without knowing. I tried not to lose another. I believed you when you cried. When you worked hard. When you made me think you had changed." He laughed bitterly. "People don't change. They adapt. What are you planning to do with the money? Build something better. Without you. Somewhere where I won't be treated like a charity case. Sandra and I already bought property in Portugal. A new business. A new life. And you're not invited. You betrayed your family. You threw your family away first." Silence. Thick. Poisonous. I reached into my desk and pulled out a small envelope. I slid it across the table. He looked at it cautiously. "What is this?" "Proof that I knew everything the moment you made the first illegal transfer. I let it go. I wanted to see what you would do. And now you've shown me." He opened it. Inside were copies of reports. Signed confessions from 2 junior employees who were dragged into the scheme. And a termination letter. "You've already been removed from ownership," I said. "The board approved it this morning." His hands trembled. "You can't do that." "I just did. You're ruining my life. You did that yourself." His face turned red with rage. "I was your son. You are my son," I said. "And I'll always love you. But I will not let you destroy what I built just because you never learned how to be a man." He lunged forward, knocking the envelope off the desk. "You're just an old man with a grudge," he hissed. "You think you're wise, but you're just bitter. You're alone. And soon, you'll die alone." I stood slowly. "No, I won't. Because I have people around me who may not share my blood, but they share my values." He backed away slowly, breathing hard. "You'll regret this," he said. "I swear to God." Then he left. The sound of the door closing behind him felt final. That night, I sat with Elias on the roof of the building. We didn't talk much. I handed him the small carving he'd given me weeks ago. "It's not perfect," he said shyly. "It is," I said. "Because it's honest." He looked at me. "What now?" I exhaled slowly. "I let go of the son I thought I had to make room for the man I hope he becomes someday." "Do you think he'll come back?" "Maybe. Maybe not. But when he does it, I won't be the same. And neither will he." Elias nodded. We sat there under the stars, quiet. I had lost a son again. But this time I had the strength to stand tall. because I had nothing left to hide, nothing left to prove, and nothing left to lose except my own soul. 3 days after Mateo walked out of my life again, a letter arrived at the workshop. It was sealed in a yellowing envelope with handwriting I hadn't seen in years, soft, elegant strokes, like a voice whispering across time. I didn't open it right away. I stared at it, held it in my palm like it was alive. It was addressed to me, Ernesto Rodriguez, but the return name, Lucia. My late wife. My Lucia. She had been gone for 6 years. Cancer took her too fast. Too cruel. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside were 2 sheets of paper folded once. Her perfume still clung to the page, faint but unmistakable. I sat down and I read, Ernesto, if you're reading this, then I'm long gone and life has done whatever it wished with you, as it always does. I didn't want to leave without saying what I couldn't say in life. Because if you're anything like the man I married, then there's still hope for you. I swallowed hard in my throat. I knew about Maria. I knew about the boy. I found the letters. I found the photograph. I kept them because I knew if you saw them, it would break you. And I loved you too much to let you break. I also knew that one day fate would bring him to your door. And you would have a choice. To repeat your father's mistake or to become the father yours never was. I watched you raise Mateo with all your flaws. I watched you work your hands to the bone, never asking for help. You were proud. Sometimes too proud. But you were never cruel. Just lost. Haunted. And I wanted to save you. Even if I couldn't save myself. So if Elias has found you by now, then that is my final gift to you, the truth. Because only the truth can make a man whole. And only a whole man can lead a family. I couldn't read the rest for a while. My tears soaked the letter. Elias found me there an hour later, still sitting, still holding the words of the woman who had carried my pain even into her grave. Are you okay? He asked softly. I handed him the letter. He read it in silence, eyes glassy by the time he finished. She loved you, he said. Even when she had every reason not to. I nodded slowly. She saw more in me than I saw in myself. We went to her grave that evening. Brought her the carving Elias had made. We placed it by her stone beside the wildflowers Mateo used to pick for her as a child. Felt like closure. Like a wound I had lived with for so long had finally begun to heal. Days passed. Then weeks. Business recovered. Elias officially joined the company as head of artisan design. His pieces sold for thousands. He taught our younger workers with patience and humility, traits I hadn't known I'd passed down. And then, one morning, Mateo returned. He showed up at the workshop, not dressed in his usual arrogance. No briefcase, no sunglasses, just jeans and a faded hoodie. He looked thinner, tired. Can we talk? He asked. I led him to the back of the shop. He sat. I said nothing. I lost everything, he said quietly. The Portuguese investment was a scam. Sandra left, took Isabella back to her mother's. I stayed quiet. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said. I wouldn't forgive me either. But I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I looked at him. For the first time, really looked at him. Gone was the angry boy, the entitled son. What sat before me was a broken man, humbled by life. You hurt me, I said. Worse than I thought was possible. He nodded. I know. You hurt your mother's memory. Your daughter. Your brother. He looked up. Brother? I nodded. Elias never stopped calling you that. Even when you cursed him. Mateo swallowed hard. I don't deserve him. No, I said. You don't. But maybe, just maybe, you can become someone who does. We sat in silence. Then I did something I didn't think I'd ever do again. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small brass key. It was the key to the original workshop, the one my grandfather built. I placed it on the table between us. What's this? He asked. A chance, I said. To rebuild. To learn. From the bottom. No title. No special treatment. Just work. He looked at the key. Then at me. I'll take it, he said. I nodded. Elias welcomed him the next day. No coldness. No pride. Just patience. It was the beginning of something none of us expected, the family we never had, learning how to exist together. Weeks turned to months. Mateo started carving. It was slow at first, but he found a rhythm. Elias taught him. They laughed. They argued. They bled together. And one day they brought me a new piece, a sculpture of a father sitting on a bench, two sons on either side, all facing away. No faces, just figures. But you could feel the love in the silence between them. They called it perdón, forgiveness. I placed it in the front window of the workshop. People stopped to stare every day. I never sold it, because no amount of money could match the price of what it represented. In the end, I learned something I never understood before. You can lose a job, lose a house, even lose a fortune. But the real treasure is in the lives you mend. When you stop running from your truth, when you let go of pride, and when you realize that family, no matter how broken, is worth fighting for, even when it nearly destroys you. Because sometimes the only way to rebuild is to lose everything first. And that's exactly what I did. And I have never been richer,